Hey everybody, my name is Matt Pierce. I'm the Learning and Video Ambassador for TechSmith Corporation. Glad to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about video production at a variety of different levels. My level being that I know a little bit, but I'm definitely not an expert video producer. And I've got two great people with me that are going to also be sharing their perspectives, and we're going to work through a variety of topics in these conversations. Today, we're going to really be talking about why we think you might want to have a video workflow and maybe why you don't need one. So again, Matt Pierce, Justin Simon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Justin Simon. I run our content team here at TechSmith for the marketing side of the house, and I am the least experienced video producer here. Most of my videos that I make are for internal, although some of them go external as well here and there. So I am definitely interested in learning more and how to get better at doing video.
Andy
And
Owen.
I'm Andy Owen. I'm Andy Owen, video production team lead at TechSmith. I'm in charge of the YouTube channel as far as the produced content we put out, not including Matt's lives, of course. But we produce marketing materials and all sorts of other things for video. I've been doing video for 20-ish years, I realized, just as I said it out loud. And so I've got a few years under my belt now. Oh, man, I'm going to become that old guy who knows video and has been doing video since VHS.
That's right, Betamax. Gotta say Betamax.
Well, I did have a Betamax player growing up, and it was awesome.
There you go. Well, so let's talk about workflows, guys. I mean, we know that a lot of people are very confused about how to get started making video. They're worried about the work that it's going to take to video. But first thing I want to do is let's talk about when we say video workflow, what is it that means to people? Because I think it sounds really complicated. It sounds really complex, but I don't think it has to be.
Well, I can tell you as somebody who doesn't make videos, when I hear video workflow, my first thing that I hear is work and more work than I want to do. It's like planning any type of project, right? That's what I think of as a lot of the benefit is in the prep work, but I really don't want to do it.
Yeah, it's awful, right? It's no one likes that part. Well, or you really like that part, but then you don't ever get to the fun stuff, the stuff that you're going to make the video. What about
no?
Andy,
and I just want to do the fun stuff. I just want to edit. I just want to hop right in and work. But I think that's one of the things that I want to figure out is how to actually get it to the point where I make it easier on myself and not more difficult.
And it's funny because I hear when you say, I want to get to the fun stuff and the editing. And yes, I think the fun stuff is in the editing, but I feel like more beginners quit when they get into the editing because they didn't have a plan. And they were just like, oh my gosh, I had no idea how hard editing actually was. This is some nonsense. And so I think the editing workflow for me has a lot more to do with starting with a plan. And I'll be honest, I mentioned to you guys before we started, planning was never my strong suit. That's something I've kind of developed and learned over, the last few years even. But I used to work in weddings, for example, and a wedding has a lot of planning before you just go and take the vows, right? Especially a more elaborate wedding. And the same was true for me filming the weddings. I needed to know where the bride was going to be, at what time. Is she getting her makeup on then, and then her hair done? Where's the groom going to be? Because he's probably not in the same room, so I'm going to need another person filming the groom, and that means 2 videographers. Okay, now I've got them. Do we have the same amount of cameras? Are we using the right lenses? All of that is stuff that I don't want to figure out in the moment. So I need to know in advance where everyone is and how I expect to shoot it. So
yeah,
less to do with scripting in those situations.
I'm thinking about a sliding scale here, right? Because those weddings are infinitely more complex than anything I ever do, especially working at home, right? It's literally one camera. I turn it on. I talk. I have a topic. But I think the key there's key things that, especially people that are making instructional videos or anything that's more involved than just turning on camera and talking, should do. I feel like you're going to benefit from having an outline. You're going to benefit from maybe having a script. I think people want to shy away from scripts because it is work, to your point, it's work. It's hard to write a good script that sounds good and sounds natural. And I think just having thought through, what am I going to show? What actually is going to be on camera? Is it really going to be me? Am I going to be showing screen? Am I going to be showing images or something? I think that the sliding scale is going to depend on the complexity and kind of the quality I'll put that out there, guys. I think the quality is impacted by how much you plan. I get less quality, and maybe that's okay. Like listen to me now. I'm not scripted, so I'm gonna say stuff that doesn't sound as good as if I actually had wrote those words.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think one of the things when you talk about scripts that I found most difficult, especially when you're on screen, maybe less when you're doing maybe an audio first, where you're narrating over it and doing some sort of voiceover. That's a little bit easier. But when you're on screen, you have to look natural talking on screen, and that is intimidating too, because you see yourself, you hear yourself, and you're like, I look bad, I sound bad. I'm not even going to bother. I'll just go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've recently had to experience this as you guys know. I've now been on camera for our YouTube series, and it's a totally different game when you're actually, like you said, trying to be natural on screen. Like we have a teleprompter, and I'm reading the script off a teleprompter, and so I don't want my eyes darting back and forth as I'm reading this script. I want to be looking and engaging with the audience, and it's hard too because I also want to make those words my own. So part of I think that scripting and that planning is what kind of tone do I want to set? Is this a more formal training video where the tone is really more dictated by the content, or is this a kind of like this? Is this a casual conversation where we're just chatting about a topic? And I think there's a balance to be had in between there. But I think it can be difficult reading a script and coming across naturally. So I like the outline format. I just haven't had success doing it for these videos, right? Like I need the script because I'm just not like Matt can have a conversation very naturally, whereas I can have this conversation as it's guided. But if I'm by myself in a studio trying to read an outline, I don't know.
I think there's a difference here, though, Andy. I think the difference is that when it's a live conversation like this, that's the way it's meant to be. But with those videos, and I think it comes down to control. And if you are new to video creation, the last thing you want is things going off the rails because like you said, people get stuck in editing, and it's hard to control. And fix things. You can't fix a mistake as easily unless you've taken that shot maybe a couple times, and I've done series where it's scripted, and I can make mistakes, and we can go back and re-record it and fix it, and like we have pieces to choose from. But live, if I'm not editing it, that's fine. This works, right? Like I can do a funny eyebrow, and no one, it doesn't matter. But so I think it really comes to how much control do you want over your end product. But it is hard. I think some people are probably watching this or listening to this and saying, but it's hard to be on camera and just talk naturally. It's hard to read from a script naturally. So I guess I just don't do it. Yeah. So we should stop making videos, guys.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the biggest barriers. It's funny. I literally just last week was playing around with some stuff in Camtasia for making a video, and it was the thing that Andy talked about. I'm down in my basement by myself trying to shoot this video. The energy is static, right? Like it's just me. I've got to try to make something. Yeah. And I think that is some of the apprehension where I you shoot the first bit of it, you watch it, and you're just like, oh man, like how do I make this better? What do I need to do? Some of that just naturally probably comes from doing more of it, to be honest, is what I'm thinking. But it is sort of like how do we get to a point where we feel more comfortable doing it and working through it. Andy, do you rehearse your scripting at all? Do you practice it to get it in your brain so you know beforehand, or how do you sort of
Good
prep
question.
for that?
I wouldn't say I rehearse it. I read it out loud a few times though. So because for me, the reading it out loud isn't really so much rehearsing it as making sure the script works. Because if I stumble just reading it, then this isn't how I would naturally say it. So I need to fix it. And I think that's helped. Even before I was the one on camera doing it, we had a bunch of videos that our coworker Aaron did for Snagit on YouTube, and we would do the scripting. But right before we'd film it, we'd bring Aaron in to read through it, and every time there was something that she'd be like, I don't know if I'd say it like that. And so we'd fix it to how she would actually say it, because she has to be able to convince us that this is her speaking to the camera, not someone speaking through her. So yeah, I read it in that regard. To your point earlier, though, I would also say yes, exactly. Doing it a whole bunch of times is the only way to get good at it. I hope my videos have gotten better as I've done them, because the first few were fine, but like now I'm getting more comfortable and I'm aware of how the edit's going to turn out. So I know kind of how to inflect. But for those who haven't heard it or seen it, Ira Glass has this piece on creativity that if you haven't listened to, go Google it. Ira Glass on creativity, where he talks about we all have this taste and we know what good content is, and we know we're not making it yet. Like this isn't what I would be listening to quite yet. But the only way to get through that, as he says, is just to keep making more. The only people who break through that barrier are the ones who keep doing it and keep doing it. And at a certain point, you don't even realize you've become more natural just because you're more comfortable.
To that point, Andy, we've talked to, and people can find this content in the TechSmith Academy, but we've talked to creators of videos who are very successful on YouTube, and they'll tell you the same thing. It wasn't an overnight, like, oh, overnight, now I'm a successful on YouTube, right? Like, it's taken them 10 years, and that's not to discourage anybody, but it's just to say you've got to put in the reps. It's like building muscle, doing anything. You got to, Justin, if you're into the basement and it's quiet and it's hard, you're not finding that. You've got to find all the things that are going to allow you to keep going so that you can have that energy, so you can be excited. And I think there's things to think about here. And then I've got another point about scripts, but maybe you need to bring somebody in to your basement. Now, COVID and all sorts of restrictions, you can't have someone standing behind the camera, but can you have a picture?
My kid.
Who's your audience, right? Talk to them, or can you do things like that are going to allow you to be focused on what's really important when you're delivering that message. And that's something I found as I've given scripted delivery, is like really trying to think about, who am I talking to, and why am I talking to them, and why am I saying it this way versus maybe the way I normally speak. And the other thing I'll say is that you can go through, as you're reading your script, you can mark up your script. Like if you need a reminder that like it's going to be end on an up note or whatever, you can underline it or do something that signals to you like, hey, this is what we're doing with this word. And practice. You got to practice those things so they make sense. But I know our instructional design team has done that, and to much success, right? Like, so then as you're doing a read through, you know how it should sound, and you're not having to recreate that on the fly, because if you got a 2 or 3 minute script or 5 minute script, you're not going to remember like, oh, was I supposed to say that with a down inflection or with an up inflection or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, because I'm thinking through this, and I'm thinking through some of the other advice that, Cooj, who works with us, gave, which is to start with something fun for a video. Like, so I'm thinking through that, right? Like I should probably start with a fun video rather and try to plan it out and see, what would I create, and then try to make that with something I'm knowledgeable about or interested in, versus like, I think this would be a good video to shoot. I'm going to just try to figure out how to make it. And I have no interest in it. I don't, I think that's some of the hang up too for me, is like, get that one under my belt that I've probably from start to finish, soup to nuts, like planned out, and what that might look like. One thing that stuck to my head that you said, Matt, which is also interesting, is, and we do this a little bit in terms of other content that I can speak to, is talking about like knowing who your audience is, having that, putting that at the top of the script even would be beneficial, or the top of the outline, like understanding who am I talking to, why are they interested in this, and just having that top of mind when I head in there. So.
And I think if you know those things, like you can, like, I know a lot of people who are very capable speakers who I think could literally hit the button to record and be fine, because they put in the time, they know those things, they know who their audience is. But it's not an excuse. I don't want to excuse anybody from saying have a workflow, have a plan, because if you haven't thought about it, you're going to find yourself, and I'm sure Andy has dealt with me on this, is that you're going to get to a point you're going to be like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know how to put this together, because you didn't think about the transition and the flow from this thing to this thing, and it's really tough to recover from, and that's what I think makes video editing challenging and sometimes painful, is we haven't spent the time to do the front-loaded work, and we think, oh, it should be easy, It's not. And you know, everything, I think a lot of things that we see and hear on social media make it sound like it should be like just no brainer. It's gonna be quick. It's gonna be painless. And I don't think it has to be hard. I just think it's gonna take time, and you have to put in the early steps, or else you're just gonna, it's not gonna work like you thought. And once in a while we get lucky. Once in a while I get lucky, but most of the time it's like, nope. I'll be mid-recording something like, this is not working. I'll have to stop and go back and be like, okay, write out what am I doing, because I didn't nail it.
Well, it's interesting. It makes me think of my wife's a photographer, and when she was just getting started, she would overshoot, right? Like you're just taking picture after picture after picture because you think, you know, I've got to capture every moment. Well, what that means is at the back end, when you're done, you have to cull through 1,000 pictures versus 100. And so having Andy, you know, right? Like from that wedding stuff, right? So in my mind, it's like, okay, I could go in with a bunch of footage that I've recorded of me rambling that then I have to go watch and cut and edit and maneuver and all of that, versus like if I just spent a half hour to an hour, planned out each section, figured it out, it would save me a lot of grief.
Yep. Yeah, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've come back, weddings especially, where I've come back, you know, it's a 9-hour day and I have 2 cameras, that I've come back with 9 hours of footage between the 2 cameras. And it's too much. I have to edit that now. But the other thing you were talking about too is when writing a script, I thought, you know, one of the things, I think it was Justin actually who told me a while ago, add at the very beginning of every script, "Hey mom." And it gives you this tone that we were looking for, at least in our videos, where are we explaining things too technically? Because if we're saying something like the effective synergistic results you'll receive from, okay, no one wants to listen to this. So if I say, "Hey mom, the effective synergistic results," that's probably not a conversation I'd have with mom. That was
I don't know.
helpful
My mom's
reminder.
pretty technical, Andy.
Well, sure. I guess I wouldn't have it off work hours with mom. Maybe.
No, absolutely. It's a fantastic point that it's shaping everything you're doing in your planning so that's actually going to be effective and targeted to your audience, right? Like if you're talking for that friendly, like that, "Hey mom" works. If you're talking to your CEO and that you know they want it to be you need it to be a little bit formal, adjust the language, and that takes practice and time. I mean, that's not something, you know, like how long have we been writing scripts at TechSmith? And that's not like it's advice that's been around since the dawn of time.
Right. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna go to on a completely different side note. So go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, but I forgot my thought, so I don't know what to do now.
All right.
This is where you stare at the camera.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing that, you know, I sort of have a question about is it best practice? Because I know from like writing blogs, like that's my experience. Like we don't write a single blog here at TechSmith without at least an outline, or maybe some people would even call it like a brief, where we know we're trying to go after this particular audience on this particular topic for this particular reason. Like, is that something you guys would suggest doing on videos as well, as like creating just like a little brief or a little, even before I start thinking about scripting? I don't know if you guys have experience doing that at all on the video side.
Yeah, I mean, in the script process, I think if you don't know who your target audience is, then you're not really writing an effective script, right? You're just writing on a topic and you think it's good for anyone and broad enough for anyone, but the problem then becomes it's helpful for no one. So I think I don't know that I necessarily have created, you know, briefs before I was here, because we do that a little bit here. But I always tried to keep in mind who my audience was. For weddings, it's easy. Obviously, you're looking at the couple, you're looking at their family. But I mean, I had people responding to my videos.
You're talking to the bride. You're not talking to anybody else. You're talking to the bride.
And see, that's what kills me too. Is like how many times I would post a video and strangers of the couple would be like, "Oh, that one made me cry. Good job." And it's like, that's the point. Like I was aiming at the family and the bride and groom, but that hopefully made it such an emotional experience for them that it was able to translate and speak to other people. But my target was them. And that way I had a goal in mind. It wasn't just like, well, everyone who came to this wedding should be a feature of this video, from Uncle Tommy to friend Susie. Like, no, like, and that would happen sometimes afterwards. I'd be like, I didn't see so-and-so in the video. And it's like, yeah, they weren't They weren't the point of the video, but I can add them back in later.
We've talked about that in a little bit, and if we get more specific into like software, if you're creating software demos or trying to show people how to use it, understanding where those people are at with the software is extremely important, right? Like, do they know the product, or do they know they just want to do something that the product does? Because that's going to change how you talk about the process. You know, if somebody knows how to wants to know how to zoom in on the screen, but doesn't know how to do it in a particular product, you're going to frame that differently than if it's like, I am a Camtasia user and I want to learn how to zoom in Camtasia. Those are two completely different scripts or videos, even though they're on the exact same topic. And you wouldn't probably know that unless you're starting at the front end.
Well, I want to put this in the framing of the question about your writing a brief. I think there's never going to be harm in laying out some of the things that you want to say beforehand, whether it's a script or an outline. If you need a brief because you don't know your audience, or you need that reminder, you need to kind of process it. And same with the screen recording stuff, right? Like, you're going to benefit by putting more information up front, because the more you know, the more you can target. Because I think one of the kind of the deadly sins of video, especially not being prepared and going in and having a defined thing to talk about, is, you know, we always get asked the question, how long should your video be? The reality is it can be any length that makes sense for the topic, but far too often when I don't have a script, I don't have an outline, I haven't done that prep work, what's going to happen is I'm going to talk way more than I need about that particular topic, and I'm going to include things that aren't relevant. They might be valuable, like nuggets of truth, but at that point in time, if they need to know how to zoom in Camtasia, and I haven't focused on that thing, they don't care. They're just like, well, this is stupid. I'm going to move on. They're going to either drop out of the video, they're going to skip ahead and miss stuff. So you got to, I think from a value perspective, that stuff is going to allow you to say, this is what I need to focus on. This is how I'm going to get there. Oh, by the way, there might be nuggets that I want, but is that really, really what my audience needs? And if you can do that, then you're going to make more concise videos, which I think will play better. Because, you know, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos to try to get help. My recent thing has been how to sharpen using a whetstone. And some of it's just like, I don't care. I don't even know what you're doing. Why am I like, skip, move on to the next guy to show me, how do I know what 20-degree angle looks like, you know, like, or whatever it is that I need to know.
Well, and you talk about, you know, the value of zooming in versus zooming in Camtasia. And, you know, if we can make either video, and there can be nuggets in both. Like, I think just being obviously forthright, Justin told me one time, I think one of the first videos I was making, and for those who don't know, Justin and I work together very closely, and one of the things you help me with a lot, Justin, is remembering the audience. Because if I made videos for people like me who were video producers, we could get very in the weeds with zooming, and too much so. And so remembering to pull back and talk to our
audience. You need to make them for people like me.
Exactly. And the thing is, if I make them for people like you, hopefully people like me can still get nuggets from the video, right? Because just because I'm dropping knowledge about, you know, beginner or intermediate steps on how to zoom in on a timeline, well, maybe, you know, someone like myself who's been doing video for 20 years has never used Camtasia. And so zooming in on the timeline acts a little bit differently, actually. It's not the same in Premiere and Final Cut as it is in Camtasia. And so there's always nuggets of information that people can pull. So yes, you need to guide towards an audience that you've specifically narrowed to, but don't think that that's going to neglect everyone else in the meantime. There's still information for them. And so I think the other sin you can have is trying to narrow your focus too much. And I keep falling into this and having to pull back and saying, like, this is a beginner's tip. Nope, this is just a tip. This is how to do the thing. If I label it beginners, then someone like myself is going to skip it and possibly miss out on good information.
Yeah. I do think there's another conversation around software in particular, since we're talking about making software tutorials. The beauty of software tutorials, especially for people who are, you know, not experienced or not wanting to be on camera, is you don't have to be on camera. And if you do go that route where you're not going to show your face, which is perfectly acceptable, your workflow that we've been talking about can change. you can all of a sudden write a script, and I would recommend with software tutorial, write a script, record that audio, and then build your video to it, because it's going to go, I think, a much smoother process. In that case, you know, like we talked earlier on about like, oh, being on camera, reading is hard. Well, in this case, you just have to read. You don't have to worry about what you look like. You just have to make, you know, read it in a way that doesn't feel too stodgy or too forced. But like, I think it changes the dynamics if we're talking about software, in the sense that we can cut out a lot of work. We don't need this. You just need your voice, and you need what's going on screen. I know some people will take issue and say like, well, I want to do it all at once. Fine. Or they want to do the video and then record the audio. Fine. I really don't care how you do it, but one of those processes is going to work better. For me, I like scripting and audio first and then building, because frankly, it just gives me the most control over the process.
Right. And, you know, when we're doing screen recording videos, I was going to talk a little bit about storyboarding, but I think one of the things people freak out about storyboarding is like, well, this isn't a Hollywood production. It doesn't need to be a Hollywood production storyboard either. So for us, we've customized our storyboards into part of the scripting process, which is when I'm writing the script, I have 2 columns, and in the left-hand column, and you can make it the left, the right, whatever, I make it little notes about what I expect to see on screen here at this point, because that kind of helps me visualize, like if I'm talking about A, B, and C, I can't skip to E and F without hitting D, you know? And so I've written down the process. I'm going to hit record. I'm going to go to file. I'm going to go to menu, whatever the process is. But as I write down the visuals, it may remind me, oh, you know what? Actually, at this point, I need to go back and hit this first or talk about this. So I'll write down what I expect to see on screen. Sometimes even, you know, we'll use screenshots in there as little like storyboards, but nothing elaborate. Just grab a section of the screen that I expect to show, and that's helpful too. So.
I like the screenshots. I use Snagit, and then I'll grab from the video and Snagit, actually just screenshots along the way, so I know I've captured every step, so I haven't missed something, because something always pops up and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that was there.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen,
I can tell you the amount of videos. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the amount of videos I've done where I go through and afterwards hear myself say like new window, and it actually says like window. And I'm like, great, I read the thing wrong. But if I recorded the process in advance, I would have seen like, oh, that's not what it says.
Well, we are just about out of time here. So what I want to do is I want to do a kind of quick roundup at the end here. I want to give you 30 seconds to no more than 1 minute. Don't have to take that long a time, but tell me, we're talking about why do you need a workflow, or do you need a workflow? And we'll each share our perspective. We'll start with you, Andy, as the seasoned pro of video editing. What's your final take?
Yeah, I think you need to have a workflow. You at least need to know what your plan is to say, I hope to teach this type of person how to do this. Are you going to go in depth in the software, or are you talking about higher level principles? I think it's important to know your audience, and it's important to know what you want to talk about and show on screen. Otherwise, it's real easy to click record and just get lost and find yourself floundering. I've done it. I imagine both of you have done it, where you kind of hit record and we're like, I didn't think this through. So yes, come up with a plan, know where you want to start, know where you want to end. Even if it's just an outline, that's great. Full script, even better.
Perfect. Justin, final take.
Yeah, same. I think starting with a plan, it feels like more work, but it's necessary. It's like painting a wall. You should probably sand it, prep it, clean it, make sure it's gonna be all good before you just throw paint to the wall. So I think to me, it's probably starting small as somebody who's a new video creator, as in terms of the video itself. So start easy, start with a basic topic, create a little brief, a little script, talk through it, and then just practice from there, and then feel confident that you can get it done. Because I think that's part of it, is when you never finish something, you never feel like you're getting better. So I think start small and then get better from there.
I would just echo that last advice. Practice and working on it, getting better is the key here. But I agree with both of you. You need a workflow. It doesn't matter what that workflow looks like. It doesn't have to be what we told you. Find something that's going to work for you, build on that, and make it so that you can make the video that's going to save you. It's going to save you time. So do those steps that save you time and allow you to make the best content possible. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode. We want to thank everybody for listening in. We want to thank Andy and Justin for sharing their perspectives and ideas. And everyone, we hope that you keep working on leveling up your skills wherever you're at in that process. Keep growing and developing those skills and making better videos every single day. Thanks, everybody.